On November 1st, 1987, 24 strange-looking vehicles pulled out of Darwin, Australia to begin the World Solar Challenge, the first transcontinental solar car race. Powered only by electricity generated from sunlight, these racers were attempting to cross an entire continent through the desert and the desolate outback to reach a finish line in Adelaide, almost 2,000 miles to the south. The entries in this great solar adventure came from visionaries and technicians in 7 countries. The designers included high school and college students and professionals from companies such as Ford, General Motors, and Mitsubishi. One car, the GM Sunraycer, pulled away from the pack at the very beginning and turned the race into an historic demonstration of technological innovation and creative design. My name is Molly Brennan. I was one of the 6 people lucky enough to be chosen to drive the Sunraycer to its triumphant finish in Adelaide. It was one of the great experiences of my life. It's difficult to believe, but the saga of the Sunraycer had begun less than a year before the car crossed the finish line.
It must have been late December that I first heard about the World Solar Challenge. Between then and about the 1st of March, I was in the process of trying to evaluate the various areas of resource that might be tapped for the program.
With only 7 months until race time, Howard Wilson assembled a team of engineers from General Motors, Hughes Aircraft, and AeroVironment, a small independent engineering firm. This team was given 3 weeks to see if it was even possible to design and build a solar car in such a short time.
During that 3-week study, we looked at about 10 alternative configurations, many of which were very similar to what we saw in the end in Australia.
And out of this process of experimentation emerged the Sunraycer design, a unique approach that emphasized low aerodynamic drag by incorporating the solar array into the car's body, rather than using the standard flat-top design.
Every time we worked out the numbers, the Sunraycer kept appearing.
Using sophisticated computer modeling, Sunraycer's shape was refined. Positioning the solar array on the car's body would slightly reduce solar collection efficiency, but the design team believed that it would pay off in aerodynamic gain. The Sunraycer would have a lightweight aluminum frame to support the 570 pounds of car and driver. A powerful magna-quench motor weighing just 11 pounds. Silver zinc batteries for storing solar energy. Power electronics to regulate the electricity going to the motor and batteries. A sturdy but lightweight body made of a Nomex and Kevlar composite. A gold-plated canopy to reduce infrared radiation and keep the driver cool. A solar array with 8,800 silicon and gallium arsenide solar cells which convert sunlight to electricity. In just 3 weeks, the design team had identified these key elements of the Sunraycer. Now came the big job: designing, building, and testing it. The first step was to test a quarter-scale model at the Caltech wind tunnel to determine 2 things: the car's aerodynamic drag and its crosswind stability.
The basic drag that we measured was fine. It was 0.09 drag coefficient, straight ahead flow, which made us very happy. It was right where we wanted it to be.
In fact, the model's drag coefficient was the lowest ever measured for a land vehicle at the Caltech facility. But the crosswind results raised a special concern about Sunraycer's safety in a crosswind, when passed by a large truck, for example. Fins were added to the roof and underneath the tail, which minimized aerodynamic lift. Sunraycer's components were produced simultaneously at locations throughout the country, but construction and assembly took place at AeroVironment's Simi Valley facility. AeroVironment, which built the Gossamer Albatross, was chosen for their innovative work in alternative energy, aerodynamics, and ultralight vehicle development.
Less than 15 pounds?
Incredible.
Yep. 14.82.
This 15-pound frame would support a total weight of 570 pounds.
Take the full weight on that. Do that again.
Pretty good.
The first chassis was assembled in late May, just 2 months after the initial design.
It was very crude at that stage. It had no suspension. It had the suspension pieces, but no springs, no shocks in it at that point. But it did work.
Do I need to take up on this?
I think the steering wheel needs to be up higher, Anders.
I can't reach it.
It worked, but would it survive the 2,000 grueling miles of Australian outback? Nobody could be certain.
Oh, you mean instead of a hole has a notch? Yeah, put a notch, but then you could run a grommet over the whole thing and put the grommet down into the notch and then put the cap on.
The Sunraycer's revolutionary motor was designed by General Motors Research Labs, principally by Dr. Nady Bowles.
We make 2 long ones and 2 short ones. It was a good opportunity to use a new magnetic material that the research labs had developed and now Delco Remy is producing called MagnaQuench. It's a very high-strength magnet that allows the motor to be made quite small for its power rating and also quite highly efficient. Our motor ended up at about 92% efficiency.
The car's body had to be both lightweight and sturdy. A composite of Nomex honeycomb material sandwiched between 2 layers of Kevlar made a tough structure weighing only 3 ounces per square foot. Hughes designed and built the solar array system. They used their experience in building solar-powered satellites to array the car's solar cells with the circuitry required and to fit them to Sunraycer's curved body surface. This array would have a peak output of 1,500 watts. In other words, we were going to try to drive almost 2,000 miles on the amount of electricity needed for the average hairdryer. Hughes also designed the battery pack. Silver zinc batteries were chosen for their excellent storage capacity. Sunraycer's 60-pound pack can hold as much energy as 250 pounds of conventional lead-acid batteries. The batteries were tremendously important. Although Sunraycer usually runs on power directly from the solar array, to maintain a nearly constant speed, it needs to draw on stored solar power from the batteries to help it up hills, when overtaking another car, or when there is just not enough sunlight. The batteries were baked in a special oven to make sure they would withstand the heat of the race.
After 4.5 months of production, fairly intense work, 7 days a week, we had finished the first Sunraycer and took it immediately out to the proving grounds at Mesa, Arizona.
All right, here's my scratch. Oh, it's not even carpet tape.
You may want to walk around the front.
Here, I got it. Do we gotta get the top pins first?
Yes, the top pins, just
Somebody
start
help us out, make sure.
Just start it down, pivot it on down. Pivot it all the way down until the front touches. Let the front sit.
We did our first driving test with a rear body panel with no solar cells, just in case anything went wrong. We wouldn't ruin a whole big solar panel. But it turned out the car really drove just fine.
Forward.
Oh, hot out here.
Oh, did I?
It's cooler inside. We had no qualms at all about later that day of putting the real solar panel on and starting to really start doing the testing and the durability testing of the car.
With only 3 months until race time, the team was trying to do a lot of things at once. All the drivers were together for the first time. Each driver was able to drive the car in temperatures similar to those we would find in the Australian outback. Fortunately, the gold-plated canopy kept the cockpit cooler than expected. In fact, the Sunraycer's performance impressed everyone.
It was less vulnerable to crosswinds than we had anticipated. It had much better stability and control. The maneuverability was really better than we had any right to expect.
Sunraycer's aerodynamics were tested again in the General Motors wind tunnel. The results were again record-breaking with a drag coefficient of 0.128. As a result of these tests, the car was lowered by about an inch, moving the brakes and wheel apparatus up inside the body. This reduced the aerodynamic drag measurably. The previous land speed record for a solar car had been a little over 24 miles per hour, and we were breaking it regularly, so we were pretty confident that we could do it officially. Despite an overcast day, the Sunraycer was clocked at a speed 11 miles faster than the old world record. I was lucky enough to be driving.
How did it feel to break the record?
It felt fantastic.
What does it sound like in there?
It's very quiet. It's actually rather quiet. It sounds more like a hum coming from the car.
Is it sort of eerie? I mean, is it like...
No, I think it's great. It's not at all real loud. You just kind of hum along on the track. It's what a car that looks like this ought to sound.
Up until the time of the speed record, we had been under the safety net of the GM proving ground, so we thought it was also quite important to get out and really get into the real world.
Sunraycer, we have a large semi starting to overtake the motorhome behind you. He'll be passing you in about 10 seconds. Over. Thank you.
By the early weeks of October, the Sunraycer team had already won its first race, the race against time. In just 6 months, we had designed, built, and test-driven a prototype of the car, which set the world's speed record. Using the knowledge gained from the prototype, we went to the next step, building and testing the actual race car. Before we knew it, we were on our way to Australia for the real race, the World Solar Challenge.
Next car, please! Next car!
One of the most exciting times was the day before the race. Everyone had been looking in the newspapers and the magazines for some glimpse of the other competitors, and there was very little of that available. And so to see them all there and to see them running for the first time was really a very emotional thing for all of us that had been working so long to get there.
To qualify for the race, each car was required to demonstrate 2 things. One was its top speed, which established the starting lineup.
88, we did 113. 88, 113.
The Sunraycer won the pole position at 113 kilometers, or 70 miles an hour. Each car also had to demonstrate its ability to pass an Australian road train. Road trains are the huge 3-trailered trucks which dominate the Stewart Highway, a narrow 2-lane road that would serve as the race route. The crosswinds created by these high-speed monsters are strong enough to blow a lightweight car off the road. Thanks to its streamlined shape, Sunraycer easily passed this test. And then it was time for the race to begin. Everything we've been working on for all those months was at stake. All around us, teams pulled their cars into position, climbed in, and waited for the start.
5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
There was very much of a crush at the beginning of the race. The benefit of the pole position wasn't the fact you were just that much ahead. The benefit of the pole position was that you could get out of the mess.
Our initial strategy was to use excess battery power, allow John Harvey to really just gun it and try to open a lead so that we can get out there and keep going.
The first driver, John Harvey, flew off at 60 miles an hour, leaving the others behind. The Mauna Loa from Hawaii, which had been nicknamed the hairdryer, gave Sunraycer a good chase. It was followed closely by the Swiss car, the Spirit of Beale. Behind them came Australian Geographic's Team Marsupial and the Ford car, Sunchaser. Sunraycer maintained its starting lead. Not only did we keep up our speed, but the car ran perfectly. As the day went on, the Sunraycer continued to increase its lead. All all the cars were required to stop by 5 o'clock, when they had 2 hours to recharge their batteries. The scout team monitored the weather and road conditions ahead of Sunraycer and chose a stopping place each day. By the end of the first day, Sunraycer had traveled 323 miles. The second-place car, the Spirit of Beale, was more than 70 miles behind, followed closely by the Ford car. The Mauna Loa had dropped to 4th place after exhausting its batteries trying to keep up with the Sunraycer. Weather was a variable the Sunraycer team had no control over. Partial sun meant a lower charge for the batteries.
It's 1 everywhere. Just at 1.
Straight up.
Let me see if I can just get my
1.1.
fingers on the hinges.
So probably the way it is about the best.
Using a solar cell and a current meter, the sun's intensity was measured to see how much charge the batteries could get in the 2 hours allowed before the observer sent the car off at 8 o'clock. Energy from the solar array powered the motor, and during peak sunlight hours, enough power was generated so that some could be stored in the battery. This stored energy was then used for climbing hills or during cloudy conditions. On the second day, the Sunraycer reached one of the last remaining unpaved sections of the Stewart Highway. The team decided to change Sunraycer's regular tires, which have low rolling resistance but are thin, for knobby tires, which could better handle the rocks and bumps ahead. In just 4 minutes, all 4 tires were changed. By the end of the 3rd day, Sunraycer was more than halfway through Australia and the race. It was 310 miles ahead of the Spirit of Beale and the Ford car, which stopped north of Alice Springs. The rest of the field was spread out over 900 miles along the Stewart Highway.
It's 7:30. The Sunraycer, which is leading the solar car race from Darwin to Adelaide, is set to tackle Adelaide's traffic, and the bicentennial Camel Trekkers are now set to take on their biggest challenge. Good morning, I'm Tim Butler. The head driver of the leading car in the World Solar Challenge, John Harvey, does not anticipate any problems with the heavy traffic as the vehicle nears Adelaide. Mr. Harvey said the vehicle was capable of speeds of over 100 kilometres an hour.
Traffic really doesn't present a problem. We have 3 modes in which we can drive the car. One is the battery mode, and there's also a cruise control, which you can set to constant speed. But if you have to overtake a car, you can just flick it with a switch back into manual mode, and then you drive it like a normal car on the throttle, and you can accelerate and pass a car.
Mr. Harvey expects the Sunraycer to reach Adelaide by 10 o'clock and be in Seppeltsfield by early this afternoon.
When the Sunraycer crossed the finish line, the second-place car was 623 miles and 2.5 days behind it. The last-place car was over 1,500 miles back and wouldn't finish for almost a month.
I'd have to say, first of all, congratulations to the entire Sunraycer team. It's been delightful to see what God's sunshine can do, coupled with your ingenuity and technology. And of course, we've been delighted to see the tremendous use of technology in Sunraycer all happen because of all the people that made it happen. Again, we thank you very much, and we're delighted to be in the winter circle today. Thank you.
General Motors did much more than win the World Solar Challenge. By building the Sunraycer and winning the race by such a large margin, they have shown the world that efficient cars powered by alternative energy sources can be built. They have shown that we can do more with less, placing fewer demands on the Earth's resources. When a car crosses a continent averaging 42 miles an hour on just 2 horsepower, it changes our view of transportation. Although solar-powered cars may not be a part of our future, more efficient cars, perhaps electrically propelled, will be. Lessons learned from Sunraycer's components should find their way to the design computers of car engineers all over the world. What today's students, tomorrow's engineers, will do with this new technology may revolutionize transportation.